Have you ever wondered what the most bizarre and extraordinary moments in the Bible can teach us about life, faith, and the mysteries of divine justice? The Bible is a treasure trove of stories that not only inspire, but also surprise, challenge, and captivate. Among its pages are tales of astonishing deaths, events so unusual and dramatic that they compel us to reflect deeply on the consequences of human choices and the sovereignty of God. In today's episode, we will learn and discuss 15 of the strangest deaths in the Bible. Through these extraordinary accounts to uncover the profound lessons they hold, from the shocking demise of corrupt leaders to the tragic downfall of a rebellious king and the redemptive sacrifice of a flawed strongman, these narratives offer insights into the dangers of disobedience, the power of humility, and the hope of redemption. What makes these deaths so unique, and why were they recorded with such detail? As we explore these remarkable stories, we invite you to discover the timeless truths they reveal. Prepare to be surprised, inspired, and challenged as we delve into the first tale of this fascinating series. 1. Onan, the man who defied familial and divine responsibility. Onan's story, nestled in Genesis 38, speaks of a man caught between duty and selfish desire. Following his brother Er's death, Onan was commanded to marry Tamar, his sister-in-law, under the practice of levirate marriage. This tradition was not just a cultural norm, but a sacred duty, ensuring the deceased brother's lineage and providing for the widow. However, Onan's actions revealed a heart driven by self-interest. While he engaged physically with Tamar, he deliberately avoided conception, spilling his seed on the ground. This act, often misconstrued as merely about contraception, was a deeper rebellion against divine order and familial obligation. Onan's refusal stemmed from his unwillingness to father a child who would not be legally his own, prioritizing his inheritance over God's command and Tamar's well-being. God's response was swift and severe, striking Onan down. This narrative underscores the sacredness of obedience and the dangers of prioritizing personal gain over divine and communal responsibilities. Onan's fate serves as a timeless reminder that selfishness and disregard for moral duties can lead to spiritual and literal destruction. It also invites readers to reflect on how their choices impact not only their own lives, but also those they are called to support and uplift. Historically, levirate marriage was more than a cultural expectation. It was a lifeline for widows in a patriarchal society. Tamar's vulnerability magnifies Onan's offense, as his actions left her without the security and dignity she was entitled to. This deepens the gravity of his betrayal, not just of familial duty, but of divine compassion for the marginalized. Furthermore, the story echoes the recurring theme in the Bible that divine justice does not overlook the vulnerable and the oppressed. Onan's neglect of his sacred obligation serves as a profound reminder of the moral responsibility entrusted to individuals within a community. 2. Lot's wife, the perils of looking back. The transformation of Lot's wife into a pillar of salt, recounted in Genesis 19, is one of the most enigmatic and symbolic tales in the Bible. Fleeing the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's family was commanded to escape without looking back. Yet Lot's wife disobeyed, glancing back and instantly facing divine judgment. This backward glance was not a mere physical action, but a manifestation of a divided heart. Lot's wife's attachment to the life she was leaving, her home, possessions, and past, revealed a reluctance to embrace God's deliverance fully. The salt pillar stands as a cautionary monument, symbolizing barrenness and the consequences of spiritual stagnation. Salt, often associated with preservation and purification, takes on a starkly ironic meaning in this story. Lot's wife, in seeking to hold on to a sinful past, becomes preserved as a monument to disobedience. Her fate also highlights the broader context of Sodom's judgment, a city mired in depravity and selfishness. Her glance back, while seemingly trivial, reflects a heart still tied to those very sins. The geographical and historical significance of Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction deepens this narrative. These cities were known for their extreme wickedness, and their obliteration served as a divine warning against moral decay. Lot's wife's story, therefore, is not just about individual disobedience, but a broader commentary on the dangers of complacency in a sinful environment. Jesus himself referenced this story in Luke 17:32, emphasizing the importance of wholehearted commitment to God. For contemporary readers, Lot's wife's fate warns against clinging to past sins and distractions, urging a forward-focused faith that trusts in God's promises. This lesson resonates particularly in times of transition, where looking back can hinder spiritual growth and the fulfillment of divine purposes. It reminds us that God's deliverance requires not only physical movement, but also a transformation of the heart and priorities. 3. Nadab and Abihu, the priests who offered strange fire. In Leviticus 10, the shocking deaths of Nadab and Abihu, sons of Aaron, illustrate the gravity of irreverence in worship. These priests, chosen to serve in the tabernacle, brought strange fire before the Lord, a fire unauthorized by divine instruction. Immediately, fire from God consumed them. Their act was not merely procedural error, but a display of pride and disregard for sacred commands. Scholars speculate that they may have been intoxicated, as Leviticus 10:9 prohibits priests from drinking wine or strong drink while performing their duties. This possibility further highlights their lack of respect for their holy office. The context of the tabernacle's sanctity amplifies the severity of their offense. The tabernacle was a physical manifestation of God's presence among his people, and its rituals were designed to reflect his holiness. By deviating from prescribed worship, Nadab and Abihu not only disrespected these sacred practices, but also misrepresented God to the Israelites. This story raises important questions about the nature of worship. What does it mean to approach God in a manner that is acceptable? Nadab and Abihu's deaths underscore that worship is not about personal preference or innovation, but about aligning with God's revealed will. It also serves as a warning to leaders within faith communities about the weight of their responsibilities and the far-reaching consequences of their actions. Nadab and Abihu's deaths sent a powerful message. Worship must align with God's will, not personal preference. The sanctity of their role demanded humility and exact obedience. For modern believers, this story is a reminder to approach God with reverence, aligning our hearts and actions with His divine standards. It also challenges leaders to model integrity, understanding that their actions have a profound impact on the spiritual lives of those they serve. In an age where worship can sometimes be driven by entertainment or cultural trends, the story calls for a return to authentic, God-centered reverence. 4. Achan, the hidden sin that affected a nation. Achan's story, found in Joshua 7, underscores the far-reaching consequences of individual sin. After the Israelites' miraculous victory over Jericho, God commanded that all spoils be devoted to him. Yet Achan succumbed to greed, taking a beautiful Babylonian garment, silver and gold, and hiding them in his tent. This secret transgression led to a humiliating defeat at Ai, costing 36 lives and plunging the community into fear and confusion. When confronted, Ashan confessed, but the consequences were severe. He, along with his family and possessions, was stoned and burned in the valley of Achor. Ashan's actions reflect a heart consumed by materialism and a disregard for communal well-being. The Babylonian garment, likely a symbol of luxury and status, contrasts sharply with the humility and dependence God desired for his people. His decision to hide the spoils reveals a deeper issue of deceit, prioritizing personal gain over honesty and obedience. The communal impact of Achan's sin underscores the interconnectedness of the Israelites as God's covenant people. His actions disrupted the spiritual unity and trust necessary for their mission. This story challenges readers to consider how their hidden faults might affect not only their own lives, but also their families and communities. Furthermore, it reminds us that God's justice, while severe, aims to preserve the holiness and integrity of His people. The Valley of Achor, which means Valley of Trouble, later became a symbol of hope and restoration in prophetic literature. Hosea 2:15. This dual symbolism highlights God's ability to bring redemption out of judgment, turning places of defeat into opportunities for renewal. 5. Ananias and Sapphira, the consequences of deception. In Acts 5, the tale of Ananias and Sapphira offers a New Testament perspective on divine judgment. During a time of communal sharing in the early church, this couple sold property but deceitfully kept part of the proceeds while claiming to have given all to the apostles. Their lie was not just to the community, but to the Holy Spirit. Confronted by Peter, Ananias fell dead instantly. Later, Sapphira, unaware of her husband's fate, repeated the lie and also fell dead. This dramatic punishment instilled great fear among believers, emphasizing the seriousness of honesty and integrity within the faith community. The couple's actions reveal a deeper issue of hypocrisy, the desire to appear righteous while harboring deceit. Their deaths serve as a stark reminder that God values authenticity and sees beyond outward appearances. The early church's emphasis on unity and generosity makes their betrayal even more egregious, as it threatened to undermine the fledgling community's foundation. This story speaks directly to modern issues of integrity, transparency, and authenticity. In a world where appearances often take precedence over reality, Ananias and Sapphira's fate reminds us of the spiritual dangers of deceit. Their actions disrupted the trust and unity of the early church, highlighting the importance of sincerity in both faith and fellowship. 6. Uzzah, the man who touched the Ark of the Covenant. Uzzah's death, recorded in 2 Samuel 6 and 1 Chronicles 13, is one of the most shocking in the Old Testament. As King David sought to transport the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem, it was placed on a cart driven by oxen. When the oxen stumbled, Uzzah reached out to steady the ark, but the moment he touched it, he was struck dead by God. At first glance, Uzzah's punishment may seem harsh. His action appeared instinctive, an attempt to protect the ark from falling. However, a deeper examination reveals that his death underscores the sanctity of the ark and the importance of following divine instructions. God had explicitly commanded that the ark be carried on poles by Levites, not transported on a cart, Exodus 25:14. By neglecting these instructions, David and his men treated the ark with casualness, and Uzzah's touch became a symbol of this irreverence. The ark represented God's presence and holiness among the Israelites. Uzzah's death reminds believers of the gravity of approaching God's holiness without proper reverence. It also highlights the importance of obedience to divine commands, even in the smallest details. This story compels us to consider how often human assumptions or conveniences are placed above God's explicit instructions, leading to unintended consequences. For modern readers, it serves as a warning against complacency in worship and the necessity of respecting God's holiness with awe and humility. David's reaction to Uzzah's death, a mix of anger and fear, further reflects the tension between human misunderstanding and divine justice. The king temporarily halted the ark's journey and later resumed it with greater reverence, emphasizing the need for reflection and correction when faced with God's discipline. Moreover, this incident provides a broader reflection on the relationship between divine holiness and human responsibility. It highlights that proximity to God's presence demands a heightened level of obedience and reverence. Uzzah's death, while tragic, serves as a pivotal moment that reshaped Israel's understanding of worship and reinforced the importance of approaching God on his terms. 7th Herod Agrippa, the king who accepted divine worship. The death of Herod Agrippa, detailed in Acts 12, is a stark example of the consequences of pride and self-exaltation. Herod was a ruler who sought to consolidate power and curry favor with both Roman authorities and Jewish leaders. His persecution of the early church, including the execution of the Apostle James, exemplified his desire for control. Herod's downfall came during a public address. Clad in royal robes, he delivered a speech so captivating that the crowd declared, "This is the voice of a god, not of a man." Acts 12:22. Instead of deflecting this blasphemous praise, Herod basked in it. Immediately, an angel of the Lord struck him down, and he was consumed by worms, dying in agony. This gruesome death highlights the dangers of pride and the failure to acknowledge God as the ultimate authority. Herod's acceptance of divine worship was an act of hubris, directly challenging God's sovereignty. For believers today, Herod's story serves as a reminder to remain humble and give credit to God for all achievements. It warns against the seductive nature of power and the spiritual peril of self-glorification. Herod's story also reveals the fragility of human power in the face of divine authority. Despite his wealth, influence, and charisma, his reign ended in humiliation and physical decay. This juxtaposition of outward grandeur and inward corruption reminds readers of the fleeting nature of earthly glory and the eternal significance of living in submission to God. Furthermore, the historical context surrounding Herod's reign amplifies the moral of his story. As a ruler under Roman occupation, Herod navigated a precarious balance of pleasing his Roman overlords and maintaining favor among the Jewish people. His eventual downfall illustrates the futility of attempting to secure human approval at the expense of divine obedience. The imagery of being consumed by worms not only signifies physical decay, but also symbolizes the internal rot of unchecked pride and moral failure. 8. The wicked son of Judah. Er's death, mentioned briefly in Genesis 38, is shrouded in mystery but carries significant weight. He was the firstborn son of Judah, but the Bible simply states that he was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. Genesis 38:7. The brevity of this account leaves much to interpretation, but it underscores the seriousness of living a life contrary to God's will. As the eldest son, had a position of privilege and responsibility within Judah's family. His wickedness, though unspecified, was severe enough to warrant divine intervention. Er's death illustrates that God's justice is impartial and that privilege does not exempt one from accountability. It also reflects the broader biblical principle that sin, if unchecked, leads to death. Romans 6:23. The silence regarding Er's specific sins invites readers to reflect on the nature of wickedness. Was it his character, his actions, or his neglect of familial and spiritual responsibilities? While the details remain unknown, the implications are clear. A life lived in rebellion against God's standards carries severe consequences. For readers, it prompts introspection about their own lives and the legacy they leave behind. Er's untimely end also serves as a reminder of God's overarching justice, which operates beyond human comprehension. Furthermore, the context of Er's family adds depth to his story. As the son of Judah, a key figure in Israel's lineage, Er's wickedness contrasts starkly with the divine promises associated with his family line. His death serves as a somber reminder that divine justice applies universally, regardless of heritage or status. It also foreshadows the redemptive arc within Judah's story, as God's purposes ultimately prevail despite human failings. 9. Absalom, the rebellious son hanged by his pride. The tragic tale of Absalom, found in 2 Samuel 13-18, is a narrative of ambition, rebellion, and the devastating consequences of pride. Absalom, one of King David's sons, was renowned for his physical beauty and charm. However, his life was marked by turmoil and betrayal. After avenging the rape of his sister Tamar by killing their half-brother Amnon, Absalom fled into exile. Upon his return, he began to undermine David's authority, presenting himself as a champion of the people. Absalom's rebellion culminated in a civil war as he sought to seize the throne. Absalom's pride ultimately led to his downfall. During a battle in the forest of Ephraim, his long hair, a symbol of his vanity, became entangled in a tree, leaving him helpless. Joab, David's commander, disregarded the king's order to spare Absalom and killed him. The imagery of Absalom suspended between heaven and earth is rich with symbolism. It reflects his spiritual and moral limbo, a man caught between ambition and accountability, beauty and destruction. His story is a poignant reminder of the destructive power of pride and ambition. His rebellion caused immense suffering, fracturing his family and nation. For readers, it serves as a warning about the dangers of prioritizing personal desires over humility and obedience to God. Absalom's life invites reflection on the impact of unchecked pride and the necessity of seeking reconciliation and guidance before acting on impulses that can lead to ruin. Absalom's story also offers insights into the complexities of forgiveness and justice. David's love for his son remained unwavering, even in the face of betrayal, highlighting the tension between parental affection and the need for righteous discipline. This dynamic underscores the emotional toll of rebellion and the profound consequences of broken relationships within families and communities. 10. Jezebel, the queen consumed by judgment. Jezebel, one of the most infamous figures in the Bible, met a gruesome end that epitomizes divine retribution. As the queen of Israel and wife of King Ahab, Jezebel was a staunch advocate of Baal worship, leading the nation into idolatry and persecuting the prophets of God. Her death, foretold by the prophet Elijah, came after years of defiance against God. Following the death of Ahab, Jezebel continued to exert influence, attempting to maintain her power through manipulation and violence. Her reign of terror ended when Jehu, anointed by God to purge Israel of idolatry, overthrew her. Thrown from a window by her own servants, Jezebel's body was trampled by horses and devoured by dogs, leaving only her skull, hands, and feet. This brutal fulfillment of prophecy underscored the inevitability of God's judgment against unrepentant sin. Jezebel's story highlights the consequences of leading others into spiritual ruin and defying God's authority. It serves as a stark warning about the long-term effects of sin and the ultimate accountability all individuals face before God. For readers, Jezebel's fate underscores the importance of aligning one's life with God's truth and rejecting influences that lead away from Him. Her story also demonstrates the ripple effects of leadership. Jezebel's actions had profound implications for the spiritual state of Israel, showing how a leader's choices can either guide people toward God or lead them astray. Her downfall reminds us that no amount of earthly power can shield one from divine judgment. Furthermore, the vivid imagery of Jezebel's final moments, her violent death, and the desecration of her remains serves as a somber testament to the inevitable consequences of defying divine authority. 11. Hophni and Phinehas, the corrupt priests. The deaths of Hophni and Phinehas, recounted in 1 Samuel 2-4, highlight the consequences of corrupt leadership and irreverence toward God. As the sons of Eli, the high priest, Hophni and Phinehas were entrusted with sacred duties in the tabernacle. However, they abused their positions, exploiting worshippers by taking the best portions of sacrificial offerings and engaging in immoral behavior with women serving at the entrance of the tabernacle. Their actions represented a profound disrespect for God and His commands. Despite repeated warnings, including a prophecy of judgment, they persisted in their sins. During a battle against the Philistines, Hophni and Phinehas carried the Ark of the Covenant into the battlefield, treating it as a talisman for victory rather than a symbol of God's presence. The Philistines triumphed, killing both brothers and capturing the Ark. The significance of their deaths goes beyond their personal failings. It marked the end of Eli's priestly lineage and served as a turning point for Israel's spiritual leadership. For modern readers, their story warns against complacency in positions of influence, particularly within faith communities. Leaders are called to uphold the sacredness of their responsibilities and align their actions with their faith. Hophni and Phinehas's fate also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of treating God's power as a tool for personal gain. The capture of the Ark added a layer of national crisis, symbolizing the consequences of collective irreverence. The loss of the Ark underscored the gravity of failing to honor God's commands and placed Israel in a period of spiritual and political turmoil. The eventual return of the Ark, accompanied by miraculous events, reflected God's sovereignty and his commitment to restoring his people despite their failures. Furthermore, their story sheds light on the importance of mentorship and accountability in leadership. Eli's inability to correct his sons contributed to their downfall and the larger consequences for Israel. This serves as a reminder for leaders today to uphold accountability and foster spiritual integrity within their communities. 12th, Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, the leaders who challenged God's authority. The dramatic account of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram's rebellion against Moses, found in Numbers 16, illustrates the consequences of defying divine authority. These men, along with 250 followers, accused Moses and Aaron of exalting themselves above the congregation, questioning their God-appointed leadership. Korah's challenge was rooted in envy and pride. Although he was a Levite with significant responsibilities, he desired the priesthood, a role reserved for Aaron and his descendants. The rebellion escalated as Korah's followers demanded equal authority, disregarding God's clear instructions. The severity of the punishment, the ground opening and swallowing Korah, Dathan, Abiram, and their families, while fire consumed the 250 men offering unauthorized incense, demonstrates God's intolerance for rebellion against his established order. This event served as a powerful reminder of God's sovereignty and the dangers of challenging his appointed leaders. For contemporary audiences, this story highlights the perils of envy, divisiveness, and the rejection of God's ordained leadership. It calls for humility, trust in divine guidance, and the recognition that God's purposes often extend beyond human understanding. The story also emphasizes the importance of unity within communities of faith and the need to respect God's chosen representatives. Korah's rebellion left a legacy of caution for future generations. The censers used by the 250 men were hammered into plates to cover the altar, serving as a lasting reminder of the consequences of defiance. This physical symbol reinforced the message that reverence for God's authority must remain central to worship and communal life. Furthermore, the story underscores the danger of unchecked ambition within spiritual contexts. Korah's actions remind leaders and followers alike to evaluate their motivations, ensuring they seek to serve rather than to elevate themselves above others. His rebellion demonstrates how envy can disrupt divine plans and fracture community harmony. 13. Saul, the tragic end of Israel's first king. The story of King Saul, spanning 1 Samuel 9-31, is a tale of promise, disobedience, and ultimate downfall. Anointed as Israel's first king, Saul initially displayed humility and courage. However, his reign was marked by repeated acts of disobedience, including offering a sacrifice without Samuel, 1 Samuel 13, and failing to completely destroy the Amalekites as commanded by God, 1 Samuel 15. Saul's rejection of God's instructions led to the withdrawal of divine favor. Tormented by an evil spirit and consumed by jealousy of David, Saul descended into paranoia and desperation. His tragic end came during a battle against the Philistines, where he fell on his own sword to avoid capture. His sons, including Jonathan, also perished in the conflict. Saul's downfall highlights the dangers of pride, fear, and disobedience. It serves as a somber reminder that reliance on human strength and defiance of God's will lead to spiritual and physical ruin. His story also offers insights into the destructive power of unchecked emotions, as jealousy and fear drove him away from God and into isolation. Yet, Saul's narrative also invites reflection on God's patience and willingness to guide even flawed leaders. Despite his failures, Saul remained a pivotal figure in Israel's history, and his life serves as a complex illustration of human weakness and divine justice. For modern readers, Saul's story emphasizes the importance of seeking God's wisdom and remaining obedient, even in challenging circumstances. Saul's relationship with David also provides a rich backdrop for exploring themes of forgiveness and perseverance. Despite Saul's relentless pursuit, David refrained from taking revenge, demonstrating a profound trust in God's timing and justice. This dynamic highlights the stark contrast between Saul's fear-driven actions and David's faith-based restraint. 14. Samson, the strong man's redemption. The life and death of Samson, recounted in Judges 13-16, epitomize the interplay of human weakness and divine strength. As a Nazirite set apart for God's service, Samson was endowed with extraordinary physical strength. However, his life was marred by impulsive decisions, vengeance, and a susceptibility to temptation, particularly in his relationship with Delilah. Samson's downfall came when he revealed the secret of his strength, his uncut hair, to Delilah, who betrayed him to the Philistines. Captured, blinded, and humiliated, Samson appeared to be a broken man. Yet, in his final act, he turned to God, asking for strength to defeat his enemies. Pulling down the pillars of a Philistine temple, he killed himself along with thousands of Philistines, delivering a decisive blow to Israel's oppressors. Samson's story illustrates the consequences of straying from God's path, but also highlights the possibility of redemption through repentance. His life challenges readers to consider the importance of faithfulness and the power of God's grace, even in moments of failure. It also underscores that God can use flawed individuals to accomplish his purposes, offering hope to those who feel unworthy of his calling. The duality of Samson's life, his immense potential and his tragic flaws, invites reflection on the balance between human responsibility and divine empowerment. His story encourages readers to rely on God's strength rather than their own, recognizing that true victory comes through submission to his will. Moreover, Samson's final prayer reflects a profound act of faith. By seeking God's help in his weakest moment, Samson demonstrated that dependence on divine power transcends physical limitations. His story calls readers to embrace humility and trust in God's ability to bring redemption, even from the darkest circumstances. 15. Josiah, the king who defied God's warning. King Josiah, celebrated for his religious reforms and devotion to God, met an untimely death that underscores the importance of seeking divine guidance. His reign, detailed in 2 Kings 22-23 and 2 Chronicles 34-35, was marked by a passionate effort to restore true worship in Judah, including the destruction of idols and the renewal of the covenant with God. Despite his faithfulness, Josiah made a critical error when he ignored God's warning delivered through Pharaoh Necho of Egypt. Against divine counsel, Josiah engaged Necho in battle at Megiddo and was fatally wounded. His death marked the end of a period of reform and the beginning of Judah's decline toward exile. Josiah's story serves as a reminder that even the most righteous individuals must seek and heed God's guidance in all decisions. It emphasizes the importance of humility and reliance on God's wisdom, rather than acting on personal convictions alone. For readers, Josiah's death highlights the necessity of balancing zeal for God's work with careful discernment of His will. Thank you for joining us on this thought-provoking exploration of the Bible's most extraordinary and meaningful accounts. We hope these stories have inspired you to think more deeply about the lessons they offer and how they apply to your own spiritual journey. We would love to hear your thoughts. What insights did you gain? Which story resonated with you the most? Leave a comment below to share your reflections and engage in this community of seekers. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content. Your support helps us continue to bring you meaningful and inspiring stories from the Bible. See you in the next episode.